There are several ways to access ArcGIS Online using the ArcGIS API for Python, depending on whether you want to access anonymously and just access publicly available content, or if you need to access your organization's content. So let's check them out. It is the GIS class that provides access to ArcGIS Online. We import the GIS class by using from arcgis.gis import GIS. The GIS class in the ArcGIS API for Python supports several classes of users with varied authentication schemes. We are going to look at a handful below, but you can find more information at this link up here. We can log in anonymously. We can simply call the GIS class constructor and not supply any parameters. We'll set the calling of the GIS class to a variable called AGOL, and we're going to print the properties property from our GIS class to screen. When we log in anonymously, we are not accessing an organization's ArcGIS Online, but this will provide access to any publicly available content available on ArcGIS Online. I'll run the script, and here we can see the properties of the GIS object when we access anonymously. Scroll down, we can see there are plenty of properties. Scroll up, we can see that name here is null, so there is no organization name. We are accessing ArcGIS Online, and it is not a portal, so it is not an enterprise portal. It is ArcGIS Online that is being accessed. I'm going to clear this output, and in our second example, we are going to look at accessing ArcGIS Online using a built-in account. Here we are using the GIS class and supplying in the home string. When we use the home string from a standalone script, it looks to ArcGIS Pro to see what is the active username and portal. It then uses those credentials to access ArcGIS Online. That is, if you are logged into ArcGIS Online with ArcGIS Pro. You will extensively use the home string with the GIS class when you are using the ArcGIS API for Python within an ArcGIS Online notebook. I'll run this code snippet and print the properties to the GIS object once more. A lot more properties are returned when you are accessing an organization's ArcGIS Online. I scroll up to find the same information from when we viewed the properties of accessing anonymously. Here we have the name, which is the name of my organization, which is Final Draft Mapping. We are still accessing ArcGIS Online, but this time we are accessing an organization's ArcGIS Online rather than anonymously and just accessing public content available from ArcGIS Online. If you're writing standalone scripts, you can also use the Pro string rather than home to access the current logged in user from your ArcGIS Pro session. You can also optionally use some parameters. Here you can set the URL, and this will be the URL to your ArcGIS Online organization. You will supply in a username and a password. Now, for obvious reasons, this is not recommended, as you would be supplying in your password to a script that could remain for others to see. The next option is a great one, and one that I would recommend using if you are creating standalone scripts and running from your machine, or you are presenting workflows using the ArcGIS API for Python. Below, we are going to see how a profile works. Similar to the above, we are setting the URL to be our organization's URL to ArcGIS Online, provide in our username and our password. This time we use the profile parameter, and here I'm setting it to FDM. When you run this, a .arcgis profile is created in your user profile in Windows. This file right here. So the path is C users, the username, and then you have the .arcgis profile file. If I open this file, we can see the details. It has date modified, the URL and the username, and it also has in square brackets the name of the profile. Your password becomes encrypted and is stored somewhere very secret. Alright, not so secret. I'll show you where it is. I'll close these down. If you go to your start menu and go to control panel, and go to user accounts and go to manage Windows credentials, We can see here we have this entry for FDM at ArcGIS Python API profile passwords. And that is where my password is stored. If I click edit, I could go in and change the password, but we can't see what the password is, so it has been encrypted, which makes the profile option a great option to use when using standalone scripts for workflows. I'll close this down. And here I'm going to use my profile, and then I'll access the ArcGIS Online properties. And I just printed the properties to screen to show that we have successfully accessed my organization's ArcGIS Online using a profile. I scroll up. Here we can see I've accessed the organization of Final Draft Mapping. We just saw various ways to access ArcGIS Online using the ArcGIS API for Python. You're going to see the home string used quite often. And this is fantastic if you are inside ArcGIS Online using an ArcGIS Online Notebook, or you're building standalone scripts on your own machine. Another great alternative is using the profile, especially if you are doing any presentations using the ArcGIS API for Python. This way you do not have to store your credentials in a Python script.